So when we lose it again, you can come back.
Okay, we are. Give me a second. I'm just going to go push us onto the channel. And are we still on 404 Old Montauk Highway?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
All right. Let me just make sure the channel's up and running.
Being on the side of it.
Okay, we are up and running, and we are streaming.
Okay, thank you. Now that we all got cozy with each other, we can pick it up again.
So, Mr. Chairman, there was a little bit of a technical glitch there for a while that interrupted the.
Yes, we did have a technical difficulty. So we're back up and running, and we're going to continue with Brian's presentation on 404 Montauk Highway.
And
Old Montauk Highway.
I was pretty close to the end. I think around where the feed cut out, we were talking about the history of the original approval and how that location was chosen to maximize wetland setbacks and maintain the 150-foot bluff setback. That application included a scenic easement along the oceanfront. This application includes an additional scenic easement over the wetlands and the 50-foot adjacent buffer. It leaves out the path of the driveway. The planning department doesn't have any objection to that additional easement. I will bring your attention to a visual easement that's shown on the survey along the near the bluff crest, along the shared property between the subject property and 402, the property to the west. Those visual easements, as well as the turnaround easements that you see on the survey, are private agreements between those two property owners that didn't involve the town. I do want to note for the record that all of that area is deep within natural resources jurisdiction. Those private agreements, the owners can enter into whatever agreements they want to, but there really isn't anything in those easements that would authorize any clearing or disturbance in those areas. The turnaround easement is very, very close to the freshwater wetland that's on the property, and the visual easement goes down to the bluff crest. I can't imagine any circumstance where clearing or any sort of disturbance in those areas would be appropriate or to my mind, meet the permit or variance standards. And I think it's safe to say that there wouldn't be anything in the zoning board's 2023 determination that would endorse disturbance in those areas. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Brian?
No, I'm just wondering if that was out for a while. We should make him repeat.
No, he picked up where he left off. He was
Yeah, I know, but that screen was already dead at that point, so I don't know how much it got recorded.
when he was over here. He listened to the recording and knew where
Oh, okay.
he knew where he left off.
Okay, thank you.
And the history of the application is in the technical analysis. Mr. Warren addressed some of the outstanding issues, and I believe he's probably going to come back up and ask for the record to be left open to address those as well. So,
Thank you, Brian. Is there anybody in the public that would like to address this application? Rick? Oh, you, Rick.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Whalen from Whalen Fowler, PLLC. I represent Christopher Leonard and his wife Catherine, who are the owners of 406 Old Montauk Highway. That's the adjoining property to the northeast. I'll be quick because given the technical glitches, I'm sure you want to move on with this evening's hearings. So very briefly, Rich Warren touched on a lot of what I wanted to cover, and you have my letter. Basically, we have my clients at two issues. One is we wanted to make sure that the survey that you're using has accurate topography. The current survey, the one from September 2022, does not have topography except in the bluff crest area. So we don't have, spot elevations, contour intervals, anything else in the vicinity of the construction. And we had some reason to believe that there may have been a change of grade, not by the current owner, in the past in that area that was disturbed. And it sounds like that might actually be the case. So we would want you to go back and first of all, the applicant should provide 2-foot contour intervals on this survey. You should be able to compare them to what the survey data was back in around 2004, 2005. If you're using accurate information, and particularly the 2004 data should establish the true natural grade elevation, then we're okay with that. Our other issue concerns the pyramid law variance, which again, Rich Warren addressed. By the way, I want to comment. I've represented the Leonards. They bought the property, I think, about 3 years ago. So, they're past clients of mine, but I was only engaged yesterday and I had to review a lot of stuff. So it wasn't until about midday today that I was able to, reach out to Wayne Bruin and say, hey, just so you know, I'm sending a letter to the zoning board. And then I did send Wayne a copy of it. So I had little time to prepare. And it sounds like they did a bit of scrambling around today. And it sounds like that was productive because I think they're heading in the right direction. Obviously, my clients knew when they bought their property that there was a 2005 decision on this property, and it granted relief to allow a house 5 feet from the common property line and a 9.5-foot pyramid law variance. This proposal is a little bit different. The building's a little bit different. There's a driveway coming in from the north and going underground. They changed things around, but basically it's roughly what was approved in 2005. So we don't have a problem with anything the applicant's proposing in terms of the current design and layout. We just want to be sure that they don't actually get greater relief, pyramid law relief, than was granted in 2005. That's really, the sole issue that we have, and you need topography to be careful about that. But it sounds like the representatives of the applicant understand that. They've talked about, changing the gable end to a hipped roof. That will probably, that will contribute towards solving the problem. They'll need accurate topo to deal with it, but I think they're heading in the right direction. And that's our sole issue. We just want to make sure that the relief that the board grants today is no different in kind or in dimension than what was approved back in 2005. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? How are you, Jameson?
Good evening, everyone. Jameson McWilliams, Crouch McWilliams Law Group at 10 Pantago in East Hampton. I am here. I was also retained very recently by the other adjacent property owner. I just submitted a letter this evening, so my apologies. It hasn't been shared with anybody else yet. I also perhaps mistakenly used the address 202 Old Montauk Highway. There were some address changes over time. My client, who is Tony Ingrao, he used to own all of the subject property. He owns the one to the west, and he also at one point owned Rick's client's property as well. Again, like Rick, we actually don't object to the totality of the project. We did want to raise the grade issue, but for my client primarily, our concerns are the easements that are burdening the subject lot. The survey, the application survey, the SASCA survey from September 2022, from my review of it and a quick review of some of the easements that have been filed and recorded against the lot, not all of those easements are demonstrated on the survey. There is an access easement. This survey shows a proposed access easement, but there is also a recorded access easement on the other side of the flagpole. There are also utility easements, and I think that those need to be, all of the existing filed recorded easements that burden the subject parcel really should be demonstrated on the survey first. I also think it's appropriate, given the number of easements and the variety of the type of easement, that the actual language of the easements are reviewed either by counsel to the board and then explained to the board or in the records. I think some of them probably are. I know some have been filed and recorded after the 2018 revision to this original approval, and they're relevant. And specifically, I think it's inappropriate really for the board to consider really being offered as mitigation additional scenic easements that overlap existing easements without knowing the language of the easements. And I did hear Brian's, concern about whether those two particular easement areas that he raised being appropriate to be cleared, but there's no indication in the language of those easements, that's what the nature of that is. The visual easement, for example, is to provide a view shed from my client's property to the lighthouse. And existing now are non-native trees in a row obstructing that view. So if it happens to be that this board considers a scenic easement where those trees are not appropriate and it's part of the plan to remove them, that may be fine. But I think we need to understand what the easements say, where they're located before we're additionally burdening the same
But
area.
I'm not sure if it's our purview to get into the legal language of an easement, is it? Is that the zoning board's responsibility, or is that between legal counsels somehow? I'm not sure.
Well, I would think
Whether
that-
that's our purview to get in and dive that deep in. We see an easement on a survey, we approve a survey for an easement. But
I don't know if the zoning board has the authority to approve as a condition of approval to require an easement burdening a property that's already burdened by an easement that you're not aware of the language that it provides.
okay. We'll get, counsel.
So
Okay.
in my letter, I asked that perhaps the applicant, is able to demonstrate all of the easements on the survey, provide a title report. I could probably get you also copies of the easements that I have that are recorded, but whose responsibility that is, I'm willing to do it. I just didn't have enough time to get you legible scans of these easements. So the easements are the main issue. We also ask, when the grade issue was raised, if the original 2004 survey is being accepted or used as the natural ground elevation on the property, I just suggest that another option could be just to ask the surveyor to add the natural ground elevation on a survey. If we think that the grade has been manipulated over time, that's a study that any surveyor can do, provided with data that they can research. Because obviously, if the overall height in the code is measured from natural ground elevation, that's a very crucial measurement. And I think that is it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Anybody else in the public? Anybody on the phones? I gather not.
We have no one on the phones.
All right. Rich, you want to come on up?
Sure. We're Richard
A lot-
Warren,
a lot to-
Future Science again.
A lot to digest there, right?
We're happy to get all the easements shown on the survey. We think most of them are. The visual easements and those kind of things are shown on the survey at the present time, but we're happy to make sure that everything's on. We have a title report. Our client, when he purchased the property, Wayne Bruin, who's the attorney representing him, made sure there was a title report. So we'll have that. It's kind of interesting that the neighbor that actually used this area for the construction staging is complaining about the fill and the clearing and all that. But we're going to get the surveys that have the accurate topography back from 2005. We'll get that back to you. We probably need about a month to get that back. So we have the survey work to get the survey work to the architect to confirm the floor elevations. And then once we have that and the pyramid, we then get the grading and drainage plan revised, which will probably lower the house a little bit in the existing spot. Site plan's not expected to change, probably just dropping down a little bit in elevation. But this was all kind of a surprise to us as of today. So we need a little bit of time to
How
resolve
much
it.
time do you think you'll need?
I think a month. I'm hoping I get it done in a month. I've already talked with a surveyor. He thinks he can get out there next week, get the survey work. I've talked with Aris Design about the grading, and they think 2 weeks or so. Jim Merrill's offices, he's here and he can jump on it. But I'd ask for a month. If I need to get a little bit more time, I may come back and ask you for a little bit more time. But we're hoping for a month.
Okay, and then I guess we're going to need some time for
Okay.
review, public review. Rick, I don't know what.
And we will provide, once we resubmit back to you, we'll provide a copy to.
Yeah, I think if Rich is, I can submit a copy to, I'm assuming that he's the so,
Yeah, it's,
So a week after their submittal.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Being that you only had 1 day to get here.
I have a question. I'm wondering if you could tell me how you see this visual easement affecting you and your client. I mean, we're a little fuzzy about exactly what the agreement is. I know what the space is, but I'm saying, what are the responsibilities of respecting the easement as you see them from your point of view?
What? Go ahead. I'll let the attorney speak.
Good evening, Wayne Bruin, O'Shea, Marcinsic Bruin, Southampton, New York, on behalf of the applicants. Thank you for the question. I find it interesting that these are private easements, and Brian had actually mentioned there are private easements between the parties. Jameson's client actually owned all three of these lots at one point, and he was the one undertaking the various construction, and particularly the lot to the west and the lot to the east, and eventually sold this lot as well as the house lot to the east to Mr. Lindeman, who then eventually sold both lots, sold both the house lot and this lot about the same time. And that was to Rick's client. While this was all occurring, and while this board had imposed certain easements which were for the benefit of the town, and your normal easements protect the natural vegetation on the frontage and the bluff and so on, Jameson's clients was also putting what is called these scenic or view shed easements so that he could, apparently from what I heard, have a view of the lighthouse or other parts of the ocean. However, I don't think they supersede your restrictions or covenants. But I'm hearing what Jameson is saying is that I think she wants your counsel to take a look at this and advise your board if they have any impact on your ability to impose. And I don't believe they do. And we have to be mindful, like Brian had indicated, that we're not going to be able to disturb the land there at all. I guess what I'm hearing, though, is Jameson's client wants the ability to go in and clear trees on our property so he can maintain a view. I don't think that easement can supersede your authority.
There's no clearing of shady trees on that easement or any
Exactly.
near
So-
that. So
But I'll leave that to your counsel, but we'll submit, like Rich said, we'll provide a copy of our title report with every easement that is on the property. That includes the conservation easement that you imposed the first time around that was actually filed. It was necessary, I believe, to get the building permit that was actually issued for this property. So, and if there is any further covenants or easements that are needed for any part of the property or wetland buffer, we're willing to, basically do those documents as well. So if you have any questions, but we'll be able to submit those documents, the next day or so to Jameson, a title report, as well as the town attorney's office. So,
Yeah, I asked the question for the simple reason that whatever agreements are made between two neighbors, it can't possibly supersede what has gone on, which is part of the code and what we're asking for is go on. So if trees would naturally go to a certain height, whether two neighbors want them cut or not, they can't do it. So your visual
you
easement.
understand that. And
Okay, I know you understand it, but I want to make it clear that it's not as if there's some other arrangement that could somehow set aside, what are the natural restrictions you have on that
and
site.
it might be important to look at the wording of the visual easements, because if it does give him the right to go and cut down trees, that would be very important for us to know.
Absolutely. We'll provide that for you.
And if nothing else, it might help clarify the issue in the future if it became something where,
I don't want to keep this a hearing with the public commentary, so, I don't want to be, so if you have comments, the public record will be open and you can submit your comments. Right.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, with that.
Jameson wants to respond though.
No, I'm saying that the hearing is between them and us, and she has the right to give a public. I just don't want this to go back and forth constantly. You want to
Close. Okay, then in the matter of 404 Old Montauk Highway, at 404 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-22-1-4, I make a motion to close the public hearing, but to leave the record open for an additional 4 weeks.
5.
5 weeks, I'm sorry, for an additional 5 weeks.
4 weeks, do we have to get specific?
You can say 4 weeks for submittal, 1 week for a rebuttal.
Want me to say it? Yeah, okay, all right. So then, I've already read into the address here, but to close the public hearing and to leave the record open for 4 weeks for submittal and for 1 week for an additional rebuttal.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Somebody's got a second.
I'll second it.
Oh,
Concur. Concur.
Thank you.
I'll share.
Okay, next we have 20 Whalers Lane, LLC at 20 Whalers Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-152-2-15.9. Size and location is 40,571 square feet at 20 Whalers Lane in Whalers Cove in East Hampton, lot 13, map number 8585 in Amagansett. The description is to demolish the existing swimming pool, construct a new swimming pool, spa, and plunge pool, construct 219 square foot of additions, reconstruct existing decking and relocated stairs, new outdoor kitchen, new outdoor shower, construct a new brise-soleil over the existing decking and balcony, new stairs and roof deck, generator upgraded, sanitary system foundation changes for FEMA compliance, new windows, doors, and siding, interior renovations, relocate the existing pool equipment, remove planters, resurface the existing driveway, and to clear and remove invasive vegetation and revegetation. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit to 255-420 of the town code, and 8 variances are required for this application. Variances of 48.5 feet, 41.3 feet, 37 feet, 35.6 feet, 18.5 feet, and 5 feet, and 4 feet from 255-430 of the town code is required to construct the decking 51.5 feet, swimming pool 58.7 feet, kitchen 63 feet, brise-soleil 64.4 feet, additions 81.5 feet, generator 95 feet, and outdoor shower 96 feet from freshwater wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required. 1 variance of 31 feet from 255-430 of the town code is required to allow clearing to be 19 feet from freshwater wetlands where 50-foot setback is required and any other relief necessary. And the zoning district is A residence, AE flood zone elevation 10, secret class is type 2. And council, do we have proper affidavit of service of both?
We do. Pursuant to section 255-9-23 of the Town of East Hampton Code, we had both certified mailing and a posting performed on March 23rd, 2023, which is 10 days prior to today's hearing.
Thank you.
Hi, so the property was properly posted. You can see there are a couple other residences. It's a long driveway is my point, and it's at the end of the driveway. Next. That's the long driveway. Next. That's their driveway. Next. Oh, these are all out of order. Oh, all right. This is some of the vegetation around the property. Next. That's the front of the property, and my car's parked in front. Next. That's going to the right of the property. I don't have my directions in front of me, but I think it's to the west. Anyway, there's an outdoor shower there. Next. That's the side of the property, and that's my dog and my husband. That's what the vegetation looks like around the property. It's very sandy and duny. Next. Now I'm around the side of the property, the back side of the property. You can see there's a second floor deck. And that enclosure on the first floor is their AC conditioning units. Next. I guess that's the old sanitation system. Next. This is looking back at the side of the house. There's a second floor deck or porch area. Next. This actually is the wall that holds in the pool, and it's on the side of the house or the side back of the house. The house kind of sits at an angle. Next. That's going around, that's still enclosing the pool. Next. That's part of the decking that I'm looking at, that those walls surround. Next. Decking. Next. Those are stairs going up to the pool. Next. I didn't take that picture.
Well, this is an important picture because you can see the pristine dune habitat.
Yeah. And you can see, like I was trying to describe, that the pool is to one side of the house. The house is kind of an arrow shape. I thought I had some more pictures.
Oh, I am.
Oh, all right.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Brian Locascio with the Adam Miller Group, Bridgehampton, New York, attorney for the applicant. I'm doing well, thank you. I'll do my best to get through this quickly because it's late, but we're here for 20 Whalers Lane in Amagansett. Property is a flag lot totaling 40,571 square feet. The lot area excluding the flag is 39,978 square feet. Of that, the property is currently burdened by a 24,946 square foot scenic easement. The property is located partially within the ex-FEMA zone and also in the AE base floor elevation 10 FEMA zone. And due to that, the current house is not FEMA compliant. Property is currently improved with a 2-story single-family dwelling, garage, swimming pool, decking, and a conventional septic system. As you can see in the photos, the house is dated and in need of repair. As it's stated, it's currently not FEMA compliant, and we submitted a letter from the caretaker. The existing pool is actually leaking, so that's part of the reason we're addressing the pool. All of these requested variances and proposed improvements are within the already currently improved and disturbed portion of the lot. The proposed work, in our opinion, will have no negative impact on the wetlands to the north and will help improve the wetlands to the south with the installation of a new IA sanitary system and the removal of the conventional system. In order to install the septic system, we will need to clear within the allowable 50-foot setback as noted. The applicant has submitted a revegetation plan which would restore clearing upon the installation of the sanitary system, and actually will be reducing the amount of overall clearing upon completion of the project. It's also worth noting that as we were planning this project, we presented 2 locations of the proposed sanitary system. There was actually a more conforming location to the north, but due to the pristine existence of the dune land and the vegetation in the north, it was actually determined to be better to remove the existing system and keep it in the current location to the south to preserve the dune land to the north. And we're also retreating the sanitary system an additional 2.4 feet from the wetland setback. So in addition to the IA, we're creating a more conforming location. As noted, the house is not FEMA compliant. There are no required flood vents in the foundation, and the existing mechanicals are below the required elevation. So that's one of the factors we're going to do this house to bring it into FEMA compliance. We'll raise all the mechanicals and address the necessary foundation improvements. The applicant is also proposing to remove all invasive species currently on the property with the re-veg plan that I noted to restore the native vegetation in the property to allow it to thrive. Some other improvements worth noting are we're proposing a dry well for the outdoor shower. The pool equipment is being relocated to meet the required 10-foot setback from the scenic easement, which it currently does not. And the existing planters located adjacent to the pool and the deck are going to be removed to slightly reduce the nonconformity of the deck setbacks. We submitted a neighborhood analysis which shows that this house and the proposed improvements are consistent with the characteristics of the neighborhood. This was noted in the TAM that Tyler prepared, and he also agreed that in addition to being consistent with the neighborhood, it was consistent with the 1991 approval granted from this board that allowed for the house that's there today to be built. As for the variance standards, we do not feel this application will have an undesirable change in the neighborhood. Again, it's a very modest 219 square foot increase in GFA. It'll be consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. Proposed change cannot be achieved without the requested relief, given the location of the wetlands, the existing improvements. The only way to achieve this plan is to do so with the relief before you, and we thoughtfully did so by requesting the minimal relief necessary. We don't view this as a substantial variance because we're improving within the existing footprint and actually improving the property, creating a FEMA compliant house. We're installing an IA septic system where a conventional system currently exists in close proximity to the wetlands. We're doing revegetation, removing invasive species. And we don't view that the alleged difficulty is self-created, even though if you do, it's not in and of itself dispositive for you to issue determination or basis to deny a decision. And we think when you look at the project overall, that this will have an impact, a positive impact on the lot and the surrounding neighborhood. And again, we did so with the minimal relief necessary. And it's kind of it. Happy to answer any questions you have. Let Tyler give his presentation. We can address his.
Some clarification.
Of course.
The house is presently not FEMA, but it, in terms of first floor elevation, it is above the height required for FEMA. You're just bringing into compliance by, are you raising the house?
We're raising mechanicals. We're removing currently.
But the existing first floor is already above FEMA.
The foundation doesn't have the required flood vents, and it's mechanicals below the.
Okay, so
elevation.
you're by doing that, you're bringing it up to FEMA. Okay,
correct.
Anybody else have any questions?
Nope.
You want to just address the reasoning for the new pool, increasing the nonconformity of the new pool closer to wetlands?
Yeah, I think I can let the architect speak to that. It's a design, but you want to address that? Yeah.
I've got it. Jake Watkins, Roger Ferris and Partners Architects.
Do you swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
This is a diagram showing the change to the pool. The pool is in major need of repair. We need to basically make a new pool. So the reasoning for this is just to move it close. It's very close right here in proximity to the house. We're moving it further away from the house, but still within the overall footprint of the deck. It's not moving beyond that. And so in terms of the nonconformities, overall, the nonconformities are being reduced. This setback, these planters are being removed. So the deck that's in the deck there becomes the closest thing to the wetlands. The pool remains on the deck.
It is reduced in volume, and again, the current pool is leaking.
So the shape of the pool reflects the existing deck at this time.
That's right.
That's what I'm looking at. So you're getting your plunge pool or your hot tub. I guess it's on to the right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I mean, this line right here is the line of the existing deck. The pool, even though it's being reduced in size, basically conforms with that shape about a foot off for the coping.
Yeah. So the
No
intent was,
decking or coping on the new one,
This is coping right here along the outside of the pool.
and no other decking?
No other decking. We can hold it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
No, well, only Tyler brought up about the 50%.
Yeah, well, Tyler will be coming.
Yeah, and I mean, on that point, we actually never even evaluated that because we're always bringing the property into energy compliance with the HERS rating. We wanted to bring it into FEMA compliance, and we wanted to upgrade the sanitary system. So it just, to us, it was a benefit to the project, and overall, it was always something we were considering. So I think even if the 50% rule is or is not, I still think it's a benefit to the property, given the existing system and where it is in proximity to the wetlands.
Have you provided something that shows that it's not a requirement?
We're honestly not questioning it. We're offering it as part of our project.
You're offering it as mitigation.
But isn't it mandatory?
What's that?
The sanitary upgrade.
Well,
I'm asking him.
that's the question. I think whether it's mitigation or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's 50%, that's a building inspector's determination, I think.
It was always within the scope of our project, so we didn't, I think it's whether or not we can argue as mitigation, I think it clearly is a benefit to the application. But we're not questioning that comment. It's something we're proposing, it's something we want to do, and we're proposing extensive revegetation within that area, removing invasive species in that area. So overall, we're looking to clean up that portion of the property while not in any way impacting the northern dune land that we all, and working with the planning board, viewed is not a desirable location.
And you said you provided a plan on the removal of the invasives and the re-veg?
There is a re-veg plan in the memorandum. I believe it's the second to last exhibit. I don't know what the letter page.
Yeah.
And there also were 2 letters of support, which we submitted from the neighbors.
Okay. Any further questions?
No.
All right, Tyler?
Borzak for the planning department.
Tyler, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So the subject property is located on the west side of Whalers Lane in Amagansett. The Whalers Cove subdivision is an open space subdivision created in 1988 which established reserved areas and scenic easements over many of the environmentally significant features such as dunes, freshwater wetlands, which were identified at the time of that subdivision. Additional conservation measures have been associated with many of the natural resource special permit and variance applications issued by the zoning board in conjunction with the residential improvements on these individual parcels as well. The planned communities in this area have become less common throughout Long Island and the Mid-Atlantic region and are difficult to reestablish in areas that are cleared during construction activities. The most effective measure of conservation in these areas is to limit the amount of clearing to the smallest area practical. The dune land and wetland habitat on and off this parcel are high quality, relatively undisturbed, and provide all of the benefits typically associated with quality wetlands and dune lands. Overall, the current application, while some significant variances are requested, includes fairly minor changes to the existing layout of the property and very little change in the footprint of the improvements. The proposed improvements, the proposed additions to the residence total approximately 219 square feet and include squaring off the southwest corner of the upper level and filling in an area approximately 16 feet by 2.5 feet, and also includes removal of a section of the residence at the southeast corner to be converted into balcony space. Outside of the additions to the residence, the project calls for adding a small amount of additional footprint to the northwest corner decking, where the outdoor shower will be replaced with a new shower and new set of stairs on the north side of the residence to get to the newly proposed roof decking, which is within the footprint of the existing roof. Additional changes within the existing footprint include relocating the swimming pool further south to be in line with where the existing decking ended, adding a new outdoor kitchen over the existing decking, constructing a new brise soleil over the existing decking, and changing the layout of the existing decking and stairs within that footprint. The planning department does have concerns with reducing the setback of the swimming pool to the sensitive wetlands to the south. While the proposed pool is within the footprint of the existing improvements, in an environmentally sensitive area of Amagansett with many similarly constrained properties, the ZBA needs to be careful about reducing established setbacks and allowing significant construction closer to wetlands than was previously approved. Minor changes in the existing location which meet the same or greater setbacks may be reasonable, but the planning department feels that allowing a swimming pool with spa and plunge pool that requires significant construction and requires greater variance and is closer to wetlands may be inappropriate for the constraints of the parcel, especially on a property which received careful review and approvals in recent history.
Finally, as part of the application, the applicants have included a sanitary system upgrade in the same approximate location as the existing system. The leaching pools for the upgrade will be located only 29.2 feet from wetlands, and the applicants did show a more conforming location to the north of the existing residence. However, the planning department felt that the location to the south of the improvements was already partially disturbed and ultimately a better location compared to the undisturbed dune land to the north of the residence, which would be in close proximity to the scenic easement on the property as well. So to prevent any potential, just disruption to that, we suggested the southern location, even though it met a slightly worse setback. The sanitary system on the south side of the residence will still provide a better system of handling wastewater from the residence with an upgraded system, which meets the required separation of groundwater. On sensitive dune land properties, such as the current application, the planning department is most concerned with the expansion of the footprint and the impacts associated with that development. In the current application, the project appears to be in keeping with the neighborhood and also with the board's 1991 approval, which established the residence that currently exists. The board should still examine any changes in the footprint on such a constrained property, and also be sure that the amount of work proposed is appropriate for the constraints and can also be feasibly completed within the proposed boundaries of the work. With an extensive scenic easement on the parcel protecting very high quality dune land habitat and wetlands, special care should be taken in protecting the integrity of that easement during construction. Any proposed improvements on the lot need to be carefully planned and reviewed for any potential impacts on the easement, wetlands within jurisdiction, the dune land vegetation, and topography throughout the parcel. Other than that, I can answer any questions you might have.
The protection of the easement, I mean, is basically going to be done by the erosion control fencing, which is outlined in the survey. Is that right?
Right. That's what the purpose is serves. So, every once in a while that it'll incidentally be, run over or whatever, but hopefully the integrity of it stays intact. And that's, one of the reasons why we suggested the southern side for the sanitary system, because all that excavation on the north side of the house could certainly lead to some incidental clearing of the scenic easement.
So access for the construction of the new pool, if it were to be approved, it would take place over where the proposed new septic system would go. So that's going to be an area that will be disturbed in the future. So you're okay with it being disturbed during construction?
Correct.
If we were to approve the project.
Yeah, and the existing sanitary is there now, so it was obviously disturbed at one point in time in order to do that installation.
Okay. Any questions, Tyler?
I'm good. No.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you,
Is there
Tyler.
anybody in the public that would like to address this application? Anybody on the phone line?
Yeah, 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. 8 words.
I just have a request.
Okay.
Maybe a weird request.
You gotta be sworn in. You swear affirm to tell the truth, not the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do. So I spoke with Tyler already about this morning. I'm going to request that we add a condition that we submit the building permit set to the planning department to review so that the date can reflect the same date that's approved. Because what you guys have is a very basic set. It's what you require, what the planning department requires, just floor plans, elevations. The building department's going to require an electrical plan and U values on the window schedule, and going back and forth between the building department and the planning department. We just want everything to match, kind of what didn't happen with the last application. So it'd basically just be adding a condition that says that Tyler would review the plans when we put in the memo for you guys to inspect the project limiting fence. Does that make sense? Or I think it just makes everyone's life easier. And there's been a lot of back and forth with the building department because the plans are dated, whatever they're dated. And there's going to be a new, this is a year ago.
Right, but I don't know one time thing, but are we going to set a precedent by doing this? And is that going to overwhelm the planning department in the future? I think it's the applicant's responsibility to submit drawings that adhere to the zoning board's application approval. I don't think it's the planning department's role to be double checking that. Although it might be, but I don't want there to be a precedent because it might overwhelm.
And that's, I think there's been a bit back and forth because obviously you guys don't approve stuff and go through complete construction documents before we have a decision from you guys. Or it could just be a modification, but that is there a streamlined modification?
But we're basing our decision on the records we have on file, and that's what
Correct.
we would reference in our decision.
So the building
So
department.
if anything were to change, then you'd have to come back to us for a
But
modification.
it's not actual change. It's like adding a window schedule, and generally an architect would have a new date on their plans. And so there's been a little bit of, I mean, how many emails have we had in the
Yeah.
last couple months?
Essentially, the issue is, you don't get a
I
full set
get
of
the
building
issue.
plans when you approve a set
I
of
don't.
plans, because the cost involved in that is obviously not worth at that time in case it gets denied, let's say. So the issue is that when they go for a building permit, any application, the building plans are different in the fact that there's more information in there. than
Right,
what we
but what I'm saying, if there is, I know this came up a couple of months ago with probably Joel. I think Joel was involved in one. Should there be, maybe the answer is an affidavit by the applicant to say that it does comply to the zoning board's.
That would be
thing,
fine. I
so-
just, yeah, I don't want
I
to.
don't know what, if we're setting a new policy or not.
I think it's a question
mean,
greater than
it's-
maybe just one hearing, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
We're putting the approved documents
Right.
and the date.
I don't see,
So-
I don't
But-
understand the point
Yeah.
of this.
So right now, often what happens is I have to email Tyler and I see, well, now it's Joe, not Ann, but would CC Joe on it. And Tyler then says, well, I've reviewed them, it looks the same, but there is a different date. And so you're reviewing them anyway, essentially, aren't you?
at this point,
Yeah.
or if it comes in for a modification, we're going to be reviewing it and say it looks
Fine
the
to
same.
review a set of plans. I don't mind that as long as you still have an obligation to adhere to the zoning board's application at the end
Yes.
of the day. In other words, his sign off is not relieving you from that obligation.
I 100% agree. So, I mean, I'm fine with the affidavit. I
Yeah.
just stating that it's this, I mean, nothing's going to change. It's just a little bit more, it's
Right.
going to be structural. I mean, there's going to be a little bit more information on the plans. So I understand it might be greater than this. I just was trying to resolve something that might be in the future.
All right.
The other thing worth noting is there is a survey, there's two surveys with the same date. The building coverage is, the correct one is the one where the building coverage is less. We're only increasing the building coverage by 135 square feet. There's a survey that shows it.
So what survey is that? What is the date of that survey?
It's
We received two. It's the one we received March 23rd.
February 24th, 2022.
That's the same date on
That's the
both
accurate
surveys.
one?
Population to be 2,377 square feet.
So this is the accurate one, the date you just said?
Yeah, we
No,
can
no,
submit it,
no.
so that's what you
That's the
have.
one I have open.
you have the
but,
date of the stamp received one, the
No,
most recent one.
So
because
this is the
that's-
wrong one.
And it,
So what
It's the
happened was
same
the
one.
surveyor didn't update the date. He
Okay.
made a mistake on the survey and
Sure.
he didn't update the date. So there's two surveys floating around with the same exact date, but the,
Well, we have the February 24th, 2022.
yes, they both
But they're
say
both
that.
the same, but
It's
you're
stamped
saying the
that.
one with the less,
The one we
with the less
received
number is
March
correct.
23rd.
exactly,
It's the
yes.
one we
So-
received March 23rd.
The stamp
I
date is
got it.
important.
Yes. Thank you.
We could submit a current dated survey with that correct number for the record, if that's helpful.
I think that's going to
I think
be the
that's-
right way to do it. 'Cause-
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, absolutely.
We're going to have to leave the record open for a week, whatever.
Yeah, I
Do
can't
that.
imagine take much more than a day or two for Saskis to reissue a date.
Yep.
And are you able to pull up the revegetation plan, Tyler? Sure. I just want to show, because we're reducing the limits of clearing by about 3,000 square feet. And as it relates to the pool, the deck is really the only enjoyable outdoor space upon completion of our revegetation plan. As you can see with the extensive revegetation south of the deck, this is kind of going to be the useful outdoor area of the property. So, while I know we're discussing a minor reduction in the setback of the pool, I think overall it's going to be a benefit to the properties and to keep the people within the existing disturbed footprint of the house. And we're going to actually increase the amount of native vegetation on the property, including the currently cleared area south of the deck. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we'll keep this open for a week, right? Okay.
Okay, in the matter of 20 Whalers Lane LLC at 20 Whalers Lane, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-152-2-15.9. I make a motion to close the hearing and leave the record open for a week to receive an updated survey.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Glenn Bear at 24 Coolidge Road in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-68-12-11. Size and location is 18,491 square feet, 24 Coolidge Road, Montauk Beach, Hither Hill, section map 3, lots 1511 through 1514, including map number 1318 in Montauk. The description is to construct a new 3,110 square foot residence with basement garage, 2,009 square foot, 209 square foot swimming pool, 402 square foot pool patio, front entry and steps, walkways, stairs, basement entrance, retaining wall, driveway, new sanitary system, and associated structures within setbacks and jurisdiction of freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code, and 7 variances are required for this application. Variances of 50 feet, 48 feet, 48 feet, and 22 feet from 255-430 of the town code are required to construct the retaining wall 50 feet, swimming pool 52 feet, pool patio 52 feet, and residence 78 feet, respectively, from freshwater wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required. 1 variance 255-430 of the town code is required to allow clearing 45 feet from wetlands where 50-foot setback is required. 1 variance of 22 feet from 255-430 of the town code is required to construct the sanitary system 128 feet from freshwater wetlands where 150-foot setback is required. 1 variance of 6.9 feet from 255-1172D of the town code is required to allow the construction of a residence to be 6.96 feet outside the town's pyramid regulations and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B residence, zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
We do, pursuant to Town of East Hampton Code, Section 255-9-23. We have both mailings and notice of posting on March 21st, 2023, 10 days prior to the date of the public hearing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's mine. This one's mine. This is the official notice of posting, was posted properly. This is an unimproved lot, as you know. Okay, this is the house immediately to the south of the property. Next, Tyler. And this is the house immediately to the north of the property. And I'm trying to get a feel that there's a lot of grading. The road is steeply going down toward Old Montauk Highway. Next, Tyler. This is the neighborhood of directly across the street from Coolidge Drive. The other day I was trying to capture, it's a very narrow road. Okay. And this is a view down toward the south, toward the ocean side of it. You can see there's no way to really park on this road. Next. And that's a view going northward from the lot that's in the applicants. Next. Now this is immediately at the front. It's immediately off the road. There was some vegetation. There was some, native vegetation actually. So I did take a shot. Next. Now this is actually the property of the house immediately to the south. I was trying to get a feel for the grade that goes up. I'm not exactly sure where the property line is, but those, those trees are on the neighbor's property, and there was no way to get into it. It's impenetrable, so I did trespass, as Joan likes to do, on the neighbor's property and walk toward the more easterly side of the property. Next. Now I'm farther east on that, still on the neighbor's property, and just took a shot across the lot that's in question. Another view of the house up north of it. And next. And this is slightly more northeasterly. I was trying to get a view of the depression and toward the area of that wetland. I think you can see slightly some of that. And that might be the last one. That's it.
Andy, we got the case of the new wetland.
Correct. Good afternoon, Chairman Deline, members of the board. I'm going to try and be brief because I'm sure you guys have had enough tonight too as well. I'm here tonight representing Glenn Bear. Glenn picked the right zoning board meeting to not attend. This is actually his a house that he's trying to build for his family at 24 Coolidge Road in Montauk. I did submit a pretty extensive written letter, addresses the matter pretty thoroughly. I'm just going to try and keep my remarks brief and on point, and I would just refer back to my written submission to provide more detail if required. Short story is that Glenn purchased this lot on Coolidge. It's basically one of the last remaining vacant lots from an estate. It was owned by a mother who passed away, and I think he bought it from the daughter. The lot is ringed with residential developments that are typical for the area, fairly large homes, pools. They're all visible on the aerial photo as well as even on the survey. If you look, you can see the 100-foot setbacks ringing around with the houses around it. Prior to acquiring this property, we were aware that topography on the property was challenging. It's hard to describe exactly how challenging, but I'm sure Terry can understand now. When you drive by, you look at it, how do I get in? There's actually a way that you can walk down to the depression off of, what is it, Taft? Tyler. So on one of the other, there's a back door to get in. But when you stand there, you're like, I don't even want to walk through the Greenbrier to get there. We were aware that topography would be challenging for any design work on the property. In fact, it does appear that the topography was probably altered from the construction of the road, among other things. I mean, it just looks like that's how they cut it and they piled it up on the side. From the road, it's impossibly steep with about a 10-foot, 8 to 10-foot scarp right along the road. We're also aware that the adjacent properties, one of whom is owned by a client of mine directly to the south, were issued non-jurisdiction letters. I think that's a Paul Massey house directly to the south that was built, I think, in 2012. Basically, there were no wetland features identified in the town as recently as 2008, 2010, and 2011 when lot inspections were done on those lots. The President section of Montauk is not an area that is typically known to contain wetlands. There are a couple that I'm aware of. There's one at the top of Washington. I'm sure Joel might know more than I do, but there aren't too many, to my knowledge, on this southern extent along Old Montauk Highway. I will submit an email from Bruce Curtis and Evan Harrell, who purchased the house directly to the south, that says they support the application. That was a permit that was issued. It was to a prior owner to demolish the existing house directly to the south and build a new house. I think that was in 2013. Surprisingly, a lot inspection from the town in 2020 came back with depression in the rear yard, identified a wetland, which is what you see depicted on our surveys. You also see houses clearing right up to the wetlands, in some cases, swimming pools and other various typical residential structures, as well as residential maintenance that occur in close proximity to this newly flagged wetland. For instance, there are relatively new swimming pools within 30 feet of the wetland edge that you can see on the survey. In total, there are 3 pools within the required wetland setback, the close 29 feet from the edge. There's frankly no reason for the pools not to be closer. They could be as close as 20 feet from the property line at the time because they were not planning to or complying with any wetland setback. The letter I submitted does attempt to refute the wetland delineation of this area by the town, and I do want this to be part of the record for the application. Joel Halsey, who works with me, has 10 years experience flagging wetlands for the town, visited this site numerous times, often after heavy rains. We would always have him check it after heavy rains. There's been no evidence of surface water attenuation or storage on the property. Our town code has a vegetative driven wetland definition. The town's lot inspection focuses on...
Are you, just quick point of clarification, are you refuting the wetlands in front of us today?
Well, I want that to be part of the record, that the wetland.
Because that would be a different avenue to go.
Well, there were 2 ways to address this. One was to to file a appeal of the wetland determination or to apply for variances. So I do think that the wetland delineation that's in front of the town right now is an important criteria and characteristic that I want to speak of, because that justifies our variance application that we're submitting today. We do think that the town code's wetland driven definition focuses and identified on this property what are known as facultative plants that standing alone cannot be dispositive. There's no evidence of hydric soils. We did dig a couple of test holes, and I did submit some photos of the test holes. You know, they're just hand-dug pits. We don't see any glaying of soils that you would find in an anaerobic environment. There are lots of other plants growing in this area that, you know, unfortunately, Teresa didn't get to see. But, you know, there's privet hedge in there that typically won't survive in a wetland area. Honeysuckle is also pretty ubiquitous on the east end. It's growing in that area. Those aren't typically associated with a wetland area. There was also evidence of deer bedding if you got into the area. It looks like it's being used as a nest area. I wasn't able to speak to the deer, but I would tell you that deer generally wouldn't be expected to bed in a very wet area. They like nice dry bedding, sort of like we do. I do think that is dispositive and speaks about it, but these observations are all on our record and part of our justification of why we think this application should be treated differently than any other wetland application I've handled. You know, just from the reading of the wetland setback variances we're requesting, it seems like a really substantial application. But all of these things go towards, you know, deciding whether the benefit to the applicant outweighs the detriment to the general health. I did want to focus instead on the positive aspects of the application that we have planned for and adapted based on what we think is this possible disagreement over the wetlands. I think that over a geologic time frame, this was over 10 years. I mean, this is a very quick development in terms of, you know, so it's difficult to plan for it. But we do think that some of the wetland issues that were identified or the facultative plants might even be related to the adjacent residential development, the grading, the surface water runoff, all those things might be influencing this area. We did submit fairly significant revisions to the plans that the board has as of March 23rd. The topography on this lot is challenging and was challenging when we tried to avoid the depression wetland area in the rear. This triggered a pyramid variance. If we didn't have to avoid the rear, we would have required no pyramid variance because we would have been able to site the house farther back and more to the east. But my client did want to compromise on this. And the new plans basically is a redesign of the residence. We eliminated that pyramid variance, which I thought was a fairly significant concession by the applicant. It also reduced the house size to what I think is a fairly modest 2842 square feet. If you look at the pictures of the surrounding neighborhood, that shrunk about 9% of the floor area. We're proposing a deck of 402 square feet and a pool, which I would call it more of a water feature of 209 square feet. It's sort of like a plunge pool. There's a full drainage plan that we submitted. You can see some of the aspects of it on the surveys. We're going to address and store any surface water. Our revised application, contrasted with the existing residential developments that ring this site, provides permanent and substantial protection to this depression. We're proposing to erect a 6-foot-high retaining wall. That's probably one of the key provisions of our plan, that will effectively more than bifurcate the property and be essentially impassable to the applicant. He will have no access to the topographical depression on the other side, on the east side of the property. It can't be used to dump landscape debris, which is something that I see going on all over my neighborhood. It won't be mowed and it can't be planted. It's basically going to be absolutely restricted for his use. It's going to be encapsulated, and we're proposing a scenic easement over that area for eternity that will cover about 56% of the property when we're done. So it's, you know, we're the 44%, 56% behind that wall and permanently protected. There'll be no clearing or grading in this area after the wall is constructed. I thought this was a significant concession by the property owner when you examine the adjacent properties and their history. we think it's a fair compromise that will ensure the perpetual protection of this depression. I did want to quickly address some of the variance standards. The wetland setback variances are not self-created by any means. The town's recent discovery of this wetland after all adjacent properties have been developed creates a hardship that's borne solely by this landowner. Usually the benefits of zoning are shared and among neighborhoods and larger areas. This one, it came down to he's the last guy on the block. So, you know, he is bearing this standard alone. More likely, this depression was been affected by adjacent development, as I mentioned. The owner's rights essentially have been compromised by activities that he had no ability to influence. Basically, nobody was able to stand up and say, hey, shouldn't we protect this depression when all these other houses were built? And that did affect the viability of this property. But we do think that our revisions to the project are the best opportunity for this depression to accept and process any surface waters or runoff and continue to, in whatever quantity they're being contributed right now. We're not going to be contributing any to it, but it will essentially allow it to continue to develop and flourish in a manner that, and it can reach its full potential in terms of trying to create a wetland. The wetland setback variances are the minimum variance necessary as we seek to provide a reasonable and modest residential use of the property and provide the highest protections to the adjacent depression/wetland areas possible. We've engaged in the balancing act that the board is asked to participate in as part of the variance standard already. I'd welcome any questions you have. And I did want to submit this email. It just says, thanks, Joel. Evan Harrell and I have no issue with the plan's variances. Any way we can support it, we're happy to. So I didn't think it was necessary for them to call in, but I thought
Yeah, I
this
have questions about the plan. You said you submitted a whole new set of plans?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
have the
it's
old ones.
dated
Do you have them?
March 23rd, I think.
Yeah, it's March 23rd. It's in the public
I saw
files.
I just saw them briefly flash up.
So you have-
It's March 20th, 23. It's called Bear Glen Plants No Pyramid. You know, it's in the public file.
And Andy, are we still waiting for that upgraded survey? 'Cause
And it contains that diagram.
we are still, well,
Yes, we didn't have an opportunity to have the survey updated that would
Okay.
show it, but we certainly would if that were something the
So
board wanted.
that's still outstanding.
Yes, everything happened very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, it shrunk. So what you see on the survey is going to be reduced.
Oh.
Any questions?
No.
No.
No, thank you. Tyler?
Tyler Borsak for the Planning Department. So the application currently in front of the board is requesting an NRSP and variances in order to construct a new 2,841 square foot residence. I think the number that was previous was 3,100 and change. So it was a reduction in the size of the residence. With swimming pool, patio, walkways, entry stairs, retaining walls, driveway, and new sanitary system. The project requires a fairly large amount of regrading with the proposed retaining walls due to the steep slopes of the parcel. The wetlands on this parcel were first identified by the planning department as part of a September 2020 lot inspection of the lot. These wetlands were not identified in previous lot inspections of the area and likely appeared after increased development around the depression over the past 20 years, resulted in increased runoff and ultimately more suitable habitat that is able to sustain wetland species. I'll pull up the aerials in a minute just to show you the neighborhood and what's occurred over the last 10 years, 20 years. Essentially, the lot to the south was significantly redeveloped about 10 years ago. So that I think that's a major contributor. So these wetlands now contain wetland indicator species such as ironweed, sedges, elderberry, soft rush, and slender fragrant goldenrod. The wetlands on this parcel can be expected to provide all the benefits of quality wetlands and are especially important to the attenuation of floodwaters in an area of steep topography. The key changes of the soil and vegetation community of this depression provide a key example of how increased development pressures can impact the habitat of an area in a short period of time. The increased development, removal of vegetation, and regrading of the surrounding parcels has created a documented shift in the plant communities within the depression.
Overall, their current application is seeking approvals to construct a residence with a swimming pool, patio, and associated structures in close proximity to wetlands that requires a large amount of disturbance on the property. The 2,841 square foot proposed residence is close to the maximum allowable gross floor area for any parcel of this size without taking into consideration the presence of wetlands. Approaching the maximum allowable size of the residence, which requires a wetland setback variance on a parcel that necessitates the need for a sanitary system setback variance, is likely not an appropriate considering the constraints of the property. The application also includes a swimming pool and patio to the northeast of the proposed residence. The proposed swimming pool and patio require nearly 50% variances, a retaining wall, and a significant amount of fill and regrading in order to complete construction. The retaining wall is proposed to be approximately 6 feet in height across the entire northeastern side of the development. This will then require backfilling to raise the grade from the existing 52 feet up to the proposed 58 feet height and sloped from there. In addition to the fill required along the northeast retaining wall, it appears that a significant amount of excavation will be required in order to access the basement garage. The board may want to have additional details included in the record to determine the extent of regrading and if any fill will need to be brought in, how much will be reused on site, and if any of it will be removed from the property. In an area that has already shown impacts from surrounding development, any significant regrading of parcels should garner additional scrutiny. Given the constraints of the parcel, the amount of grading required and the setbacks proposed, the swimming pool and patio proposed in this application are poor candidates for the issuance of variances. While the surrounding parcels have existing swimming pools, it has been pointed out, those pools predate the existence of the wetland within jurisdiction. The property as it exists today is a poor candidate for swimming pool variance and is a better candidate for reasonably sized residents with limited accessory structures. In order to complete construction, the proposed project is proposing to clear nearly the entire parcel that is landward of the proposed 45-foot clearing setback. The applicant is then proposing to revegetate 5 feet of that clearing after construction is complete in order to reestablish vegetation up to the 50-foot minimum clearing setback from wetlands. This revegetation would make the clearing setback variance request a temporary clearing envelope for construction. The board should be cautious about granting any clearing variances from wetlands, especially on unimproved parcels. The vegetation that buffers wetlands provides an essential natural mitigation to runoff and limits impacts from upland development. The best way to preserve the natural buffer is to limit its clearing in the first place rather than attempting to restore it once removed. Final aspect of this application is the installation of the sanitary system. The proposed location for the sanitary system is approximately 128 feet from the wetlands on the parcel and is located in what is most likely the most conforming location available or within a few feet of that location. There are no other reasonable locations really on the parcel given the constraints and is likely the best option for a variance request. The location of the sanitary does raise questions about the size of the improvements, considering the need for the sanitary setback variance. The size of the residence impacts the amount of sanitary effluent, and when the leaching structures are within setbacks, the size of that development should be carefully examined. As mitigation for the project, the applicants have proposed an approximately 40-foot scenic easement buffer along the entire rear of the parcel in order to protect the wetlands and its buffer in perpetuity. The board will need to discuss if they feel that the proposed mitigation is in the mitigation in the recommended conditions are sufficient to offset the proposed development of the parcel, or if the proposed residence and associated structures are not appropriately sized for the constraints of the lot, even with the included mitigation. I did want to bring up the aerial just to show the board what the development has been like in the area. So this is 2020 aerial, and then I will pull let me double check, 2010? Yeah, so as we swipe down, that's the 2010 aerial now. So you can see on the lot directly to the south of the subject parcel, which is unimproved. That was 2010, small house, redeveloped, significant redevelopment on that lot back sometime after 2010, between 2010 and 2013. Is when that occurred. So that obviously had a significant impact on the amount of runoff occurring. The lot directly to the east, which would be this lot, they had some improvements around that existing swimming pool. This swimming pool here was also constructed sometime between 2010 and today. hopefully that's helpful. So that gives you an idea of what the development's been like in the area, especially that lot to the south. Significant redevelopment on that parcel, very close proximity to what is now considered to be a wetland. If there's any other questions, I can answer them.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Tyler?
No.
No.
Could you comment on the description of the wetlands? Or, I mean, I live in a wet neighborhood and the deer are there all the time and the plants that
I mean, I wasn't there when the wetland delineation was done, but I have as much faith in the delineation of Mike and Eleni as if Joel had done it, when he worked for the town. I don't have any concerns about that. We can certainly revisit it if, the applicant wanted us to, as a professional courtesy. The only other alternative would be an appeal of, the lot inspection itself, but that's a separate issue to get all together.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. You're going to need some time. Brian, do you want to address? Yeah, we have to go to the public too, so.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Brian Frank, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. I do feel a little obligation to speak about the wetland here. I was not involved in the delineation or its verification. But at this point in my professional career, I have over 30 years of experience flagging wetland, much of that in the town of East Hampton. I've seen a lot of changes in areas like this. I've been responsible for the wetland delineations in this town for a bulk of my career with the town. Usually am the last word in this. That 10 years of experience that Andy referenced earlier with Joel came from working with me, and to Joel's credit, he was good at it. In 2020, we had a good staff. 2020 was still the year of COVID, so the number of people that we were supposed to have in the same vehicle was somewhat limited. And the practice generally was that if there was a question about field work, they would put it in a separate pile. It said, we've got an area that's questionable or borderline, and we're not quite sure of it. We'd like to get another set of eyes on it. And since I'm the person who signs off on the field work, anyway, that's when I'd visit those properties. I was not contacted about this lot and any perceived discrepancy in the wetland boundary, and I'm a little bit disappointed that this is coming up at this late of the game. I would have been happy to visit the property prior to this. Nobody should be applying for variances that aren't legitimate. We have plenty of wetlands in this town. We don't need to designate areas that don't meet that criteria. I will tell you, I have seen areas in the President's section where 100% or at least 99.9%, I am certain that the development in the surrounding area took a low spot and transitioned it from an area that drained poorly into an area that completely met not just the town's definition of wetlands. Andy oversimplified the town's definition, but would meet any technical criteria for wetland. Privet and honeysuckle do occur in disturbed wetlands, especially if they were there as this area is transitioning to a wetter habitat. Soft brush is an obligate wetland plant. It's not a facultative plant. But either you're contesting the wetland line or you're asking for the variances, and kind of this, having a foot on both sides of the line here is kind of puts everybody in an awkward setting. My guess is Joel was probably involved in 2010 in some of those surrounding inspections of the property. He did a ton of field work with me in his tenure with the town. I don't know what's in the notes when we had found a depression that had some properties but weren't quite wet enough. We try to document that because there is an understanding that areas change over time as areas are graded. For better or for worse, it's not uncommon for people to direct stormwater to low areas, whether they're on their property or not, the stuff that we have found in the field over the years. I'm sure anybody who's familiar with development, especially in Montauk, can attest to that. So I just wanted to put this into context. I'm not familiar with this one specifically. If it was questionable, though, I do believe that both, what Mike and Eleni would have said, we've got, we would call it a tweener. We got something on the margins here. How wet is it? And this is also something that these areas are dynamic as grading continues to occur around it. What you're seeing right now is a snapshot in time, and it could be wetter in the future if what appears to be the trend is continuing. I just wanted to make that observation. As Tyler said, if it's warranted to go back out there and determine if this meets the wetland criteria or not, that's what should be done. If you want to consider the history of this as part of the unique history of the area, you're entitled to do that as the zoning board. But I would object to saying, well, it's not really a real wetland, so we're going to base our determination on that. And I just needed, I felt I needed to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel, I think you're going to need a little bit of time, right?
Yeah, sure. Joel Halsey.
Joel, you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do swear to tell the truth. I just wanted to touch base with regards to a couple of things that were said. It was stated by Tyler that the house was pretty close to maxing out the maximum allowable gross floor area on this property. We did reduce it to 2,841 square feet. The maximum allowable gross floor area on this property is 3,325 square feet. So I wouldn't say that we're close to it. I mean, we're pretty far under the maximum allowable gross floor area on this property. Speaking to the wetlands, it was also stated by Tyler that there was a documented shift in the vegetative communities. I don't necessarily know if there's a documented shift in vegetative communities because there's only a documentation of the vegetation community that exists today. And some of the species that were listed today, such as slender fragrant goldenrod, is a facultative upland plant. It's not a wetland plant. You do have soft rush in there. If that's what it is. I mean, it could be soft rush. It could be a different type of rush as well, too, which is it's listed as not an obligate plant, but a facultative upland. A facultative wetland plus plant, not an obligate plant. Sambucus canadensis, which was also in there, that's listed as a facultative wetland minus plant. So some of these there is definitely a community of wetland plants in there, but there's also a community of non-wetland plants in there as well. So, I mean, again, I'm not really here to argue the wetland. I just wanted to also say that maybe this is converting into a wetland. Maybe we should have taken a little bit more time after we got the analysis memo to bring this up to Brian Frank and say, hey, listen, we see the analysis of this project. We've read the analysis memo. Maybe we should go out to the site and discuss it with you. And that's something that we didn't do. Shame on us for not taking the time to do that with Brian after we read the analysis memo, but maybe that's something we should think about doing in the future. I don't want to bring it up the night of the public hearing, but within a few days of the public hearing, but that's unfortunately how we did it. Beyond that, there was also reference to the cut and fill calculations. We did submit a grading plan, and we also have a cut and fill calculations on that. So, I don't know how much more you would like in that situation, but we could definitely work with the engineer to develop a better plan if you'd like.
I would only say that we're not in a position to take the information from either side here and make an assessment of whether or not it is or is not a wetland. Yep. We get presented with the factual information, and we get the analysis from the planning department. The environmental planners tell us it's a wetland. It's a wetland. Yep. Now, if it's not, and that's a separate, as was brought up by the chair, that's a separate process. You can go about taking time to try to prove it's not a wetland. But I don't think that's in our purview for us to discuss at this point.
I agree with you.
Understood.
How much time do you need you have to update the survey?
We would need to update the survey, it's being done as we speak. well, not right now, but we have ordered that. And that would probably be done, I would hopefully within the next 2 weeks.
So you requesting 2 weeks? Everybody in the public, not in this room, Matt, anybody on the phone?
0 callers, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for reminding me.
I just wanted to
It's getting late.
Andy?
close out our thing. With respect to whether this is a wetland or not, it's a transition zone, and it's something that is experiencing different factors than it did before these were all developed. You can just look at the survey and that ring of 100 feet. You can see there's a lot of structures, swimming pools, grading, clearing right up to the wetland edge. I still think the best compromise is to allow this, to protect this thing. And I can't think of a more stringent form of protection than a 6-foot retaining wall. That's why we put it there, is to really block it off and allow it to continue to develop undisturbed from our property. I can't speak to what the neighbors and some of the adjacent properties are able to do because they might not be saddled with the same thing. However, our intention would be, let's let this thing alone, basically. And I think that's what our plan accomplishes quite well.
I mean, it's an interesting concept that, does it create a nonconformity for the neighboring structures,
But maybe it did, it was conforming at the time,
Future
but,
nonconformity.
at this point, I think our plan accommodates all of these concerns and tries to just create an area that we will not touch. And as to, questioning it, I think we got sent a draft TAM, but I don't know that we actually have the full TAM. So it wasn't like we had the time frame that typically we've got 2 months before. I think it was just issued within the last week or two. And I don't even know if we have a copy of it. So that's why there was the delay. I was expecting the TAM to be less provocative in terms of wetland protections, or I would have probably questioned it before, but I said, well, why don't we just provide the best protection that we can come up with as part of this strategy?
Okay. Thank you. Terry, you want to make a motion?
Okay, yes, so for the application of Glen Bear at 24 Coolidge Road in Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-68-12-11, make a motion to close the public hearing, leave the public record open for a period of 2 weeks for submission of the updated survey.
Second.
Concur.
I'll concur.
Concur. Thank you. Thank you, guys. We now have an administrative application in a Shipwreck 71 LLC. It's 71 Shipwreck Drive. Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-152-2-8.32. Next, to install a new sanitary system within 200 foot of wetland, connect existing residents and detached garage via a 1,184 square foot addition, enlarge the garage artist studio area by 480 square feet, demolish an existing pool and construct a new approximately 1,000 square foot pool, 1,600 square foot of patio, and implement a revegetation plan on a parcel containing duneland and beach vegetation.
Good evening again, board members. This property is at 71 Shipwreck Drive. Shipwreck Drive is the last subdivision to the west of Napeague State Park up south. This property has a fairly lengthy history. The improvements on it, or at least a number of them, the residents in the detached garage were built pursuant to natural resources special permit issued, I think, in the late 90s. The house was closed out with a certificate of occupancy before the building permit for the swimming pool was constructed. So the owner at the time could close out a construction roll that into long-term financing, and then get a building permit for the swimming pool. This is in the heart of the duneland area of Amagansett, and as with almost all permits like it, the permit condition required revegetation with duneland species and prohibited the establishment of turf lawn and ornamental vegetation. A prior owner landscaped the property extensively, and that's what you see on the aerial now. The property once looked very much like the state parkland to the east, rolling duneland, beach heather. This is a lot of autumn olive. Obviously, there's an extensive lawn around the swimming pool. The swimming pool doesn't even match exactly what was approved on paper in the late 90s. This property was visited by the zoning board in 2018 when the owner at that time had made an application that was going to originally propose some substantial additions and a connection of the detached garage to the house. That application ended up getting revised to something much lesser, more cosmetic changes, and knocking the garage, which is 2 stories, down to a 600 square foot accessory building. And that application also included removing the invasives and naturalizing the property. That project was never initiated. It's a new owner now. We have had this application is being reviewed by my colleague Morgan Slater. We've had a number of conversations with the agent about bringing this to the zoning board for administrative review. It is a fairly large addition. This does bring it up to fairly close to the maximum GFA for the property in this addition that would connect the garage to the main house, propose a new swimming pool with new patio, and it does once again involve the removal of the invasive species and the naturalization of the property. Because of the history and the long outstanding nature of the non-compliance of the vegetation, we've asked the applicant if they would agree to remove the invasive species, or at least a majority of them, prior to the issuance of a building permit for the new construction, and they've agreed to do that. I personally don't care if the property isn't revegetated until the construction is complete and they're closer to getting a certificate of occupancy. But the vegetative state of the property is really kind of an inappropriate sore spot in an area where most of the other properties around it have done an outstanding job with their revegetation. The proximity of Napeak State Park and both the miscanthus and the Eleagnus on the property create a vector for the spread of invasives into pristine parkland. So I think getting that stuff out of there as soon as possible, stripping out the topsoil down to the virgin sand underneath it before they get to work on the addition is a pretty compelling measure, and that's why the planning department is.
Do you feel that the reveg or the bringing it back to naturalized state outweighs the proposed project or additions set there?
I don't know if outweighs it. It's still a project that doesn't require variances. It is a large project, but what's there is a fairly large footprint of disturbance with the shape of the house, the swimming pool that was originally approved, and the detached garage. There isn't a real significant new impact from the improvements. Thank you, Tyler. Removing this, putting an addition in this area. This is the driveway. There really isn't much natural around here now. It is a large scale project. There is no doubt about that. But cleaning up something that has been it's something that this could go to the board for a regular hearing to consider all of this. But I think if we have an opportunity to finally get a lot of that junk out of there that doesn't belong there, the planning department thinks that combined with a lack of new impact from the construction. There is a new sanitary system is proposed. All of the construction is in an area that was disturbed anyway for the addition. The stuff around the swimming pool should never have been disturbed, and the opportunity to restore that, again, the planning department finds that compelling, and that's why we're bringing it to you for
Compelling is a better
administrative
word. Yes, in that way. I agree.
Redoing the whole pool?
Yes, there's a new swimming pool proposed.
I remember this property.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in agreement with this. I think to bring this back to its natural state is very important.
I don't know about the administrative.
Yeah, you mentioned that invasive species in the olive and whatnot. Are we talking about taking out all non-native species? Anything that was put in, ornamentals? Is this going back to a totally natural state? Is that what you're going to be supervising here if this change
Yes.
happens?
Yes, with the bulk of that removal occurring before they get a building permit for the new construction.
And I'm
Again,
saying
I
it's
think
not
there are some
just-
plans to do some re-veg in the areas that aren't going to be disturbed by the construction.
Right.
But getting that out of there, getting that back down to the virgin sand, again, the planning department finds that compelling.
When did this is a new owner, you said, as of when? When did these
I'd have to
people
look
come in?
that up. I think 2021, but I'd have to look that up.
But we know it's not the other person.
It is not the owner that made the application in 2018.
But it'll require a significant effort on the part of the applicant to reach the point where you're happy enough that they can then apply for a building permit.
It's a big undertaking, and that's why we wanted to make sure that the applicant was clear about what our expectations were, both so that they understood it and in us bringing it to you for administrative consideration.
I happen to agree with you that the impact of the additions is in this undisturbed, is already in disturbed areas, and that bringing back this property back to its natural state is a very important thing. So I would agree that it should go administrative. I don't know what the other board members believe, but.
Well, I think that aerial photo you have up right now tells us a lot about what's wrong with the property at this time and what we'd like to see it look like. And that if it's, as you're suggesting, going to be in your hands to see to it that we get this revegetation done correctly, then I think we're way ahead. I think it does point out something we face all the time, and that is that there were restrictions on this property that were ignored, and things that were done beyond what we want. And this is a chance for us to correct one of those. So I think that's significant.
I agree.
I'm in favor of allowing it to go administratively.
So I'll make a motion.
Terry, how do you feel?
Terry didn't weigh in.
Not as enthusiastic, but I'll agree.
Say that?
Not
She's
as
not-
enthusiastic, but I will agree if everyone else.
Thank you.
Brian, yeah.
So in the matter of Shipwreck 71 LLC, it's 71 Shipwreck Drive, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-152-02-8.32. I make a motion to permit this application to go administratively.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. I'm going to now go into post-hearing decisions. We have Michael Frischberg at 4 Osborne Farm Lane in Waynescott, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-197-8-11, to allow a one-story addition to remain as constructed. One variance of 0.8 feet is required to allow the addition to remain 14.2 feet from the eastern side yard lot line, where 15-foot setback is required. The property is located at 4 Osborne Farm Lane in Waynescott, an A2 resident zoning district, and is designated on the Suffolk County Tax Map as 300-197-8-11. The project is classified as type 2 action pursuant to State Environmental Quality Review Act and Chapter 128 of the Town Code. I believe this was a variance without a hearing. Is that correct, Tyler? This would be in my district. This is a very minor ask that normally you would have 6 inches that would fall within the variance of approval that wouldn't require coming back to us. So with the additional 4 inches that's required, I think this is a very minimal request, and I would vote to approve it. I just do think it meets the variance standards. I don't think I need to go through them here because I think it doesn't impact the town as a whole in the most part. So I would approve this application.
Second.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add.
Don't want to give me anything to.
That means you agree? So does that mean you agree? Because we're not up to the motion yet.
It wasn't a motion.
Okay.
Jump the gun.
Okay, I'll go next.
I'll go,
I
okay.
agree with Chairman Deline. It's a very minor request. It's actually very de minimis. And I also agree it is in keeping with the variance standards.
I agree. It's very de minimis.
And I will agree without repeating what my fellow board members have already contributed.
Thank you.
We should give the builder a new yardstick.
Tape measure.
Next, we have David and Carol Geller at 35 North Surfside
Don't
Avenue.
we need a motion?
No, we don't. We
No,
have
we
to wait
don't.
for the resolution, right?
Oh, okay.
Oh, boy.
What time is it?
David and Carol Geller at 35 North Surfside Avenue in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-29-1-19.10. The size and location is 19,193 square feet. At 35 North Surfside Avenue, Surfside Estates, block 356, lots 11, 12, and 13, map number 1690 in Montauk. The description is to allow the existing stone walkways, second-story decking, approximately 240 square feet patio, fire pit, and approximately 480 square foot driveway expansion to remain within jurisdiction and setbacks of and on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code, and 4 variances are required for this application. Variances of approximately 54.7 feet, 44.6 feet, 35.3 feet, and 19 feet are required from 255-430 of the Town Code to allow the existing stone walkway to remain 45.3 feet, second-story decking to remain 65.4 feet, stone patio to remain 74.7 feet, and a fire pit to remain 81 feet from freshwater wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is B residence, zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. And
This was mine.
this is you, go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, we had to save it till now. Okay. So this was, well, we have the NRSP and, okay, I'll give you my bottom line. I was back and forth on this. I was not so much about the variances. The variance for the second-story decking, I have no problem with. It's, you know, it was a second story. It was a minor change to square off the property. I guess I should start. The hearing date was March 7th of 2023. The agent was Wayland Filer. And, okay, so back to that. The second story, yeah, I'm looking to approve that variance, and I think it's de minimis from what it was on the original approval that had been given by the zoning board back in, and I have that right here, 2019. The stone walkway, the variance on that, I am also going to approve it came up in the hearing, there was gravel prior to that. And I think this too is not a big issue, and I think it does warrant the NRSP approval. The biggest question in my mind had been the stone patio and the fire pit. Again, it's, you know, the impervious surfaces. It was explained at the hearing by James Grimes that it's on a crushed quartz base with the bluestone over it. And there was some discussion. He claims this is still basically a pervious surface that allows for runoff. That's questionable. But I think the variance itself for it at 35.3 feet for that, and I think it's 35.3. I'm not sure I got that right now, actually. It was 19 feet.
35.3 feet.
35.3, yeah. What I'm looking at the survey and the survey from 2021, and I don't quite see the numbers matching up.
It says the stone patio to remain 74.7 and fire pit to remain 81 from freshwater where 100.
Right, that's the
Right,
19.
but on the survey,
19.
Oh, it
has
doesn't match
the,
up. I
at the
see.
survey, it has the fire pit at 91 feet away and the patio itself at 84.9 feet away from the,
That's measured from the northwest. The well to the south is closer.
oh, the south is closer. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
There was no line there. Okay. All right, so the 35.3 for the stone patio and the 19.19 for the fire pit. And the other thing that was disturbing was the size of the driveway. But in re-listening to the hearing, I do think that there was a good explanation as to why the stone driveway got that much bigger. And part of that in and of itself would not make me approve the NRSP for it. However, I guess make it sound like it was inadvertently, they increased the revegetation on this property and reduced the clearing substantially from what had been approved in the 2019 approval from the zoning board. And the clearing was reduced from 11,494 down to 6658, which actually brought it into compliance. And so there's a substantial number, 4,836 square feet of clearing that was reduced. And I think with all that, and the increase, with the revegetation was increased in order to accomplish that. So I do think it meets the NRSP standards, and I think it was an overall net gain for the revegetation and the clearing. So I am looking to approve this application.
In its
In its
entirety.
entirety.
In its entirety.
Okay, Ed? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm largely in agreement with my fellow board member. I think that the case can be made. There was the issue of the walkway around the house, but I think we saw some aerial photos of what the condition was before that. This was largely, the structure was surrounded in gravel. That gravel was removed. I think that was a net plus. Of course, then the walkway went in, and the walkway has got its own conditions, but I think that we were well ahead in having the gravel removed and the walkway take its place. There would be some way in which to get around the house. If we didn't allow it, then we'd still be looking at some sort of condition there. I think that the addition of the size of the driveway to me is a bit of a trade-off again on the gravel. I think there's a significant amount of gravel. They made an argument about the safety, but I think there's also the argument made by the planners that at the time of the approval, they proposed something that they got an approval on that they must have thought was adequate at the time. Later on, when they see it wasn't and they made it larger, that can be problematic for us, but I balanced it out based on strictly the exchange of one gravel area for another and taking it out from around the house and making a safer condition in the driveway was something I was willing to accept. I agree with the second floor being de minimis, and I'm not that concerned about us, and I'm willing to do that approval. I think it just as it did for Member Berger, it comes down to this fireplace and this patio around it, the stone patio. It's attractive for sure, and it's well done, and everyone knows that Grimes Land Design would do a nice job with that. It's still problematic, though, that it was put out without coming back to a board with any kind of permit. It was suggested that it was done accidentally and without a full review of what the potential problems might be by putting it there. But I do also weigh heavily the fact that the additional vegetation that's gone on the site that went beyond the approval, the original approval here. And you mentioned the figures on that, Member Berger, but we see that there was a significant amount of revegetation here beyond what would have been required by us. And as much as I'm not crazy about the idea of approving this. I'm happy to see that we have enough additional vegetation. Then going through the variance standards, 255 8H50, whether the granted variance will cause an undesirable change of character in the neighborhood, I say no. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance, I say no. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, I think that it is. It's not substantial in the large sense of a number, but I do think that it's something that we have to consider when we allow these small steps towards an environmental problem. Whether the grant of the variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical environment, conditions in the neighborhood, I say no. And whether the difficulty causing the applicant to request an area variance was self-created, it certainly was, and it's a consideration in this. But overall, I'm willing to say that the variance standards of 255-8-50 are narrowly approved here. And the NRSP standards of 255-551, and under the preservation of natural resources, whether alternative or reasonable uses of the property are determined not to exist, no. And the compatibility of the site, does it raise it to the point that the site at that location, the proposed use of it will in fact be compatible with the surroundings? And I say yes. I also think that under K, that was under D, under K, environmental protection, the natural characteristics of the site as such a proposed may be introduced here without undue disturbance. I think there is disturbance from the fireplace, but I think that we did get back quite a bit of revegetation. So with some misgivings, I am going to agree with my fellow board member and improve the entire application.
Thank you. Joe?
I'm not going to repeat Terry and Ed's very thorough review. I will point out that they had revegetated 47% more, which I find compelling. I was troubled by the approving the fire pit after the fact. But on the whole, I'm prepared to approve the application.
Thank you. Denise?
The application is not only for variances, but also for an NRSP. We're now being asked to approve certain structures after the fact. There is a process, and in this case, a modification should have been requested for the existing stone walkway, the second-story decking, and the driveway extension. So the question becomes, if these changes were brought properly before us, would we have voted, and do they meet the standards for grant of an NRSP or a variance? This property is located in an area of extensive wetlands. They play a role in the storage of water, flood control, and the natural environment. Because these wetlands flow south and east through the Surfside Estates, wetland impacts will occur in the area and affect surrounding properties. There are significant and extensive wetlands to both the south and east, which are known to contain standing water throughout the year. Some of these changes that were constructed were associated with a ZBA determination in September of 2019. The existing stone walkway was not given permission. This area was originally all gravel, and as a result of the 2019 decision, was conditioned to be removed. However, the existing walkway is not a solid stone walkway and made up of individual stone pavers, which will have less impact on the surrounding wetlands. The second-story decking was approved in a very similar layout in 2019. However, it is slightly larger. They simply cut the corner at an angle. If previously asked for, would have probably been approved. The existing stone walkway and second-story decking appear to be minor changes to the 2019 approval. The stone driveway extension, however, in my view of the code standards, is a different situation. It is now 2,530 square feet when 1,705 square feet was approved in the 2019 determination. I think this is a substantial change. It's actually half of the total lot coverage of the entire lot. The stone patio and fire pit were not part of the 2019 determination and were constructed without any permission. At the public hearing, I did express concern about the patio and fire pit being partially located over the existing septic system, and they do constitute additional impermeable surfaces less than 100 feet from the wetlands. In conclusion, I'm approving the existing stone walkways and the second-story decking. I do not feel the patio, fire pit, and driveway extension are in keeping with the variances outlined in 255-8-50 of the Town Code, standards A through H, or the natural resource special permit standards outlined in 255-551, preservation of natural resources 1 and 2, and 255-5-40, specifically D, compatibility, and K, environmental protection.
Thank you. I agree with my majority of board members so far. I believe that the problematic part of this application is the driveway and the patio and the fire pit. But for reasons explained by the other members, I do feel that the revegetation does offset that. So I'm voting to approve the entire application. Council, you good?
I'm good.
Next, we have the minutes of draft minutes of March 28th, 2023. What draft minutes?
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft minutes for March 23rd, 2023 for the East Hampton Town zoning.
28th.
What? We'll do those
March
two.
28th.
March 28th. Zoning Board of Appeals, East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have resolutions. Dana Levine at 872 Montauk Highway, Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-152-2-29.1. Council?
This application was to replace an existing decking, remove a 224 square foot portion of deck, add 312 square feet of new decking, and install a 4-foot pool fencing. Construct a pergola, an outdoor barbecue kitchen area, and screened-in porch with a roof deck on a parcel containing dune land. A natural resource special permit and 2 variances were required for this application. The board finds that reasonable alternatives exist for the, such as moving the fence closer to the residence, leaving the fence in its current location on the outskirts of the pool, all which would allow for the need of the variance to be reduced or eliminated entirely. The variance for the outdoor kitchen amounts to be approximately a 10-inch extension on the deck and only 10 square feet, and it's in the best location on the property. Given this, the installation of the fence as proposed could result in disturbance of the scenic easement. The poured concrete footing of the proposed kitchen, however, would require some excavation. However, the environmental impact of this would be mitigated by the installation of hail bales. Based on the board's determination, we have the majority of the board well agreed. The majority of the board approved the entire application except for the fencing. The fencing was denied in this application.
Joan?
She'll second
I was like, I'll second it. In the matter of Dana Levine, 872 Montauk Highway, Amagansett, Suffolk County, tax map number 300-152-02-29.1, I make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
I'll concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. We next have John and Nancy Magnan at 59 Osprey Road, Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-131-5-19.
This application was to allow the front entry porch to remain on a parcel of land containing beach vegetation, a first-story deck expansion to remain within side yard setbacks, and a second-story deck expansion to remain outside of the town's permit regulations. It required a natural resource special permit and 2 variances. The board in their discussions found that any area where structures would be removed would be revegetated with beach grass, and the clearing of the beach vegetation for the front entry porch was minimal since the portion of the front entry porch is on the gravel driveway. The applicants plan to revegetate the property to bring the clearing limits under the allowed, which is a benefit to the natural resources on this parcel. And the applicant would be required to remove the existing gravel, pavers, and raised garden bed and revegetate the area with beach grass. This will reduce the existing total coverage on the parcel from 4,095 square feet to 3,544 square feet below the 3,776 square feet permitted, bringing the property into compliance with the East Hampton Town Code. The majority of the board found in favor of the application, dissenting to the front porch entry only were two members of the board.
John, in the matter of John and Nancy Magnum, 59 Osprey Road, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-131-05-19, I make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
Next, we have the East Hampton Town Planning Board, Wayne-Scott Commercial, 30 Montauk Highway, Wayne-Scott, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-192-2-66.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, and 6.7.
So this is a long determination. I'm just going to read, I think, the relevant parts of it. On or about January 11, 2023, the East Hampton Planning Department asked the Zoning Board of Appeals for an interpretation as to the proposed project of Wayne-Scott Commercial Center as to whether the referenced project requires a special permit pursuant to section 255-5-20 special permit uses. We learned during the hearings that the subject parcels located within the commercial industrial zone consist of approximately 70.51 acres of mostly vacant reclaimed sand and gravel mines, as well as the intent of the proposed projects is to divide the land into approximately 50 lots ranging in size of 40,000 square feet to 260,000 square feet. It is intent the applicant to leave 48 lots undeveloped until sometime in the future. In deciding if the project before the planning board is required to have a special permit, as defined by the East Hampton Town Code, the board considered all the relevant statutes, laws, and the intent and purpose of this project. The zoning board concluded that based on the facts before them, the project meets the definition of a planned industrial park, is within the CI zoning district, and is the development of industrial land into 5 or more lots of at least 20,000 square feet, and therefore requires a special permit. This will be obviously given to anybody who requests it, so it's pretty lengthy.
That was the short version.
That was a short version.
Therefore, I make a motion in the application of East Hampton Planning Board, Wayne-Scott Commercial, 30 Montauk Highway, Wayne-Scott, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-192-2-66.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, and 6.7 to adopt the resolution as written.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Concur.
I concur.
And that ends.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing and work session for April 4th, 2023 at 9:41 p.m.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you.